You would think that there aren't many women in mining, but it's surprising that whenever you go, pag pupunta ka talaga sa minahan, you see so many women.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, but anyway, no one talks about them.
I mean, I met a lot of women in our company, no? So we actually have the first female resident mine manager in the entire Philippines.
Congratulations.
Then we also have female geologists, female truck drivers, female engineers.
Women are not allowed inside the mines because they are either because of different reasons. So first, either they're unlucky, or because when she enters, the gold will become jealous and then she will hide. Some say that women are dirty because they menstruate, so it's they can't. That's why they're unlucky to go inside the mine. I always maintain as a feminist that women are strong, but the difficulty is that we're not given the opportunity from birth to as we grow to develop the confidence, the muscles, the strength to be able to enter the mines, and that's the issue. Men may have the strength right now, but that's because of the roles that we played.
Hi everyone, welcome to Breaking Ground, where we break stories from up top and on the ground. For today's episode, we'll be talking about women in mining, their role, their plight, and what we can do to create an equitable society for all. Let's get to the episode. Mining is predominantly a man's world, but over the years, we see more and more women are entering the industry. So in this episode of Breaking Ground, we'll be focusing on the women in mining industry and the myths and misconceptions that surround it. So joining us today is the author of children's book, Mina Minera, feminist researcher and advocacy campaigner for development finance and women's rights, Meggy Katigbak.
Hello.
Yes, thank you, Meggy, for joining us. And look at this book.
Yes.
Grabe. All right. So, Meggy, before we jump into the book, no, can you tell us more about what you do?
Okay, so as you mentioned, no, Carl, I am a feminist researcher. I'm a gender specialist. I focus mostly on unpaid care work, development finance, women's economic empowerment. And right now, my colleagues and I are working on a project called the Planet Gold Philippines Project. So in the Philippines, so the Planet Gold project in general is a global project. It was formed because of the stipulations of the Minamata Convention, which seeks to eliminate mercury in small-scale gold mining. In the Philippines, it's implemented by our organization, the Artisanal Gold Council. And so our work mainly focuses on developing mercury-free processing technologies, and around that, working towards the formalization of small-scale gold miners, increasing their access to finance and markets, better technologies, and knowledge management, which is perfect that we're working together right now. And then cutting across all of those components is our work on gender. So we work very closely with the communities, amongst other stakeholders, governments, the private sector, international NGOs. But mainly we work very closely with communities, especially women in the communities and the miners in the communities, to first and foremost, learn more about the work about their situation. Because of course, when, as you would know, when we do community work, it's not about us saying what or telling them what to do to change. It's about both the community and us as the people with the resources working together. So that's the work that we do at AGC.
Great. So, if I'm not mistaken, so this is actually a product of the work that you do.
Yes.
This is actually surprising for us because I think this is the first children's book that is tackling women in mining, right?
Yeah, I think so. I personally, I haven't read many children's books, but I do believe it might be actually, which is, I think, very, very interesting and exciting at the same time, because you would think that there aren't many women in mining, but it's surprising that whenever you go, pag pupunta ka talaga sa minahan, you see so many women.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, but anyway, no one talks about them. Are there any, would you know if there are any storybooks about men in mining?
Actually, I think children's book and mining in general, well, at least hindi pa ako naka-encounter. So this is the first time.
Yeah.
So actually, what I want to know is, what prompted you to write this children's book, and it's centered on a female miner?
Yeah, As I mentioned, we work very closely with the communities, and then before we decided to produce the children's storybook, we were working on a gender study. So based on all of the focus group discussions that we've had with the women, and as well as personal interactions, because when you work closely with communities, you become their friends. We found that it was very prudent to develop a study on their work in the mine. So that's first of all increasing their visibility, because they are invisible. Increasing their access to it, because a lot of women in the mining sector have access to work in the mines, but very little access to sustainable work. So they can work there 1 or 2 months a year, and they find other work. As you can see there, diba, they work a lot of other jobs, and then increasing their support, because whatever support there is in small scale gold mining, it's all for men. Anyway, so that was the focus of the study, and then we realized while we were discussing the stories, we said discussing the realities of the women. We thought the stories deserve more than just research output, and of course, our research output is very important. But it deserves to be heard by a larger audience, especially by the students or the children in their communities. Of course, it's very important for all children to hear it, but especially the ones in their communities, because they will be the ones who will find ways to help their mothers, their and of course, the stories were very inspiring. But also, aside from it being very inspiring, we realized that these women needed help. So that was the point of the story. That's why, if you realize towards the end, it was more of a call to action, that if we all work together, then Mina can be her own person and all of those things. So that's what prompted us to produce this storybook.
Actually, what I like about Mina is ang daming roles
Yes.
ni Mina. So yeah, Mina's a minera, but also she's a mother.
Yes.
Diba? So marami siyang work outside of mining. And so I'm just curious whether or not there's actually a person who was the inspiration for Mina, or is it like a collective story or a representation of all the women that you were able to interact with while you were doing the research?
That's a very good question, actually. I would say both. But that's because we realized that the stories of these women, so these are the women from Paracala and Sagada, which are our partner mining communities. They're also similar. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to really produce this storybook, because they're very different people, they have different backgrounds, etc., etc., but the stories that we heard were so similar. They were burdened by unpaid care work. They had so many jobs in Sagada. They also worked as tourist guides, because Sagada has a lot of tourism. They worked as farmers. They worked as and they had all of these other work as laundry persons and cooks and all of these things. And so yeah, that's my answer to that question. It's actually both. It's one very specific person, which I can think of right now, but also all of the women in those communities.
So I know that malaki yung gap, no, or the difference between a large-scale mining company versus a small-scale mining company. So as you said, no, the work is not regular, as opposed to, I met a lot of women in our company, no. So we actually have the first female resident mine manager in the entire Philippines.
Congratulations.
Then we also have female geologists, female truck drivers, female engineers, etc., etc. And I think if we compare, no, malaki talaga yung kailangan natin gawin, no, to make things more equitable for them. So while you were working on this, not just the children's book, but also the study that you were working on for Planet Gold Philippines, ano yung mga myths and misconceptions na na-encounter mo? And can you give us examples?
Okay. Well, the very first one is exactly what you said earlier, no, that mining is a man's world. That's the very first myth that I personally realized when I went to the mines. There are women in the mines. In the Philippines, I think yung pinakalumang statistics pa, no, in small scale mining, there are 500,000 miners and then 18,000 of them are women. You would be surprised maybe to see that, oh, that's probably like very small, small estimate of that. Second, is that second is that women's work in the mining, in small scale gold mining, is not that valuable, because actually, aside apart from the actual extraction, no, which no, there's another myth about that actual extraction. They actually do everything else. So actually, the only thing that we found that most men would do in small scale gold mining was extraction. But from cleaning, after post extraction, cleaning, panning, and then before that is of course the formalization things, working with the government. That was women. And I guess one of the most common myths as well is, and this is the reason why a lot of women can't go inside the mines, is in many communities in the Philippines, and later on we found all over the world as well, women are not allowed inside the mines because they are either because of different reasons. So first, either they're unlucky.
Oh yeah. It's a cultural thing.
Yes, they're unlucky, or because or because when she enters, the gold will become jealous and then she will hide. Some say that women are dirty because they menstruate, so it's they can't. That's why they're unlucky to go inside the mine. And of course, the most obvious one is that women aren't strong enough to enter the mines. Unfortunately, as for the fourth one, or the one about the strength, I always maintain as a feminist that women are strong, but the difficulty is that we're not given the opportunity from birth as we grow to develop the confidence, the muscles, the strength to be able to enter the mines. And that's the issue. Men may have the strength right now, but that's because of the roles that we played growing up. But yes, actually us, because our team is predominantly women, when we went to the mining site, we were so excited to go inside the mines. Some of my colleagues actually went inside down the tunnel, and so I was actually personally scared, and I thought I'm strong now, but when I went there I was like, oh, I can't go inside. So it's really conditioning. So yeah, but yeah, those are some of the myths that we encountered about women in mining.
Actually, no, and I think not a lot of people know this. Not all mining operations may tunnel. 'Di ba? So sa gold lang actually usually yung, kasi 'di ba usually pag sa mga textbooks when they illustrate what a mining operation looks like, puro tunnels.
Yes.
But actually that's just dominantly for gold.
I see.
Yeah, so like for example, sa nickel, we do surface mining kasi malapit lang siya sa soil, sa topsoil. Anyway, so
Oh, sorry. Can I share? That's also interesting. In Paracale, before, because Paracale centuries na may gold mining, before, surface mining lang rin sila. But all of the gold in the surface ran out. That's why they had to dig the tunnels.
why do you think it's important to write about women in the mining industry? And my question pa na related to that is, why write a children's book?
Well, I love the second question, but I'll get to that later. Well, first and foremost, for me in general, it's very important to write about women in the informal economy in general, because the struggles that Mina goes through every day is something very common with women in the informal sector. They don't have access to decent work, access to regular income. They're very much burdened by unpaid care work, but very few people actually, well, personally, the people who I hear who speak about women in mining and or small scale mining and women in the informal economy are the ones who are in the academe. But you rarely have these conversations, let's say, in the media, or mostly they talk about empowered women in the formal sector. No, corporate CEOs, government officials, etc., etc. But for me, the real labor and the real production comes from women, unpaid care workers, from women in mining. I'm sure you know how important gold is in the economy right now, no? Given all of the
Yeah, I
political.
think siya may pinakamataas na price ngayon, no?
Yes,
Across
yes.
the critical minerals that
Yes,
we have.
yes, because more federal banks are investing right now in gold rather than US dollar.
Right, right.
The real production comes from them. Actually, everyone says. I mean, a lot of feminists say, not everyone. A lot of feminists say that when women stops, the world stop, and that's mostly because of our unpaid care work, and that's why the the children's book really mentions unpaid care work, and so women in mining in general, because of course that is the focus of our project, but also because we people deserve to know, or these women's stories deserve to be heard, because aside from being heard, we hope that more support comes to them, institutional support from there. And because of we made the children's storybook because socialization at that time starts at that age. Actually, it starts at birth, no? When we're born into a family, or it starts from conception actually. When we're born into a family, dun pa lang alam na kagad yung roles, no? Which is unfair, but we wanted to develop sort of an ending which says na the mother doesn't have to do this, which hopefully can translate to the little girl, kasi even little girls are asked to do unpaid care work at home. And that's also why a lot of young girls stop going to school, especially during an economic recession. I remember during the COVID, more young girls stopped going to school because they had more responsibilities at home. So it's not just about sharing the information, but hoping for the change that it will affect for young girls, for women in the Philippines, in the mining communities, but also all over the Philippines.
It's very interesting what you said about unpaid labor.
Yeah.
Because when we talk of unpaid labor, usually it's about being a mother, being a wife, diba? Housewife, mother. But very rare that we talk about unpaid work in the context of jobs, works, no? So I'm really very interested with that, especially kasi small scale mining has been something that the government's been trying to regulate for a long time. Because in my past life, actually, I used to be a reporter and I covered the mining industry for several years now. And yung sinasabi natin na the support that they need, I think that's very important if you want to institutionalize small scale mining, not just so that they get fair labor conditions, no, but also kasi it's also a way of protecting the environment.
Yes.
Diba? Kasi if we institutionalize something, we are given the opportunity to educate then the workers how we should mine responsibly.
Yes.
Because I think not a lot of people know din na small scale mining often actually is irresponsibly done kasi hindi sila natutulungan ng government.
Yes, agree.
And you cannot blame them kasi wala silang other means of livelihood.
Yes.
Right.
Actually, we work very closely with the Mines and Geosciences Bureau. So, of course, we know the community side, but also on the government side, there's also very little funding for it.
Yeah.
So, we hope that more attention comes to the work towards supporting them, so that more funding goes to the MGB.
Right.
Because right now, for example, we just had a meeting earlier. For small scale gold mining in the entire Philippines, the team that works on that is just 4 people in the government. So so I get and of course it's not just the Mines and Geosciences Bureau. That's also the BSP because they sell gold. So more, you're right. More support really needs to go to the small scale mining sector.
Since you're very exposed to the industry, no, and how women play a part in this, what can you tell us about the gender division of labor, specifically in the Philippines?
So it's actually a phenomenon that cuts across all sectors. And it's something that happens all over the world, especially since we're all connected somehow by a shared history of wars and colonization. But when you talk about the gender division of labor, there's always of course, there are a lot of layers to it, but the way that I like to explain it is that uh, society or the economy sees women's labor, for example, as one that is mostly what do you call that, unproductive, and then men's labor as productive. But when you say productive, it's more of what matters by in the economy right now. They say productive because it produces cash. It produces monetary and fiscal incentives. And they call women's labor as unproductive because it's at home, rather things that, for example, require care, things that require, I hate it when people say this, things that require less skill. So cooking, cleaning, laundry, etc., etc. And then that translates, of course, in other sectors. That's why, for example, women dominate the care economy. There are more women women health workers, no, but there are more women health workers. But when you talk about the gender division of labor, the labor that matters are usually given to men. So when you talk about health workers, there are several. There are nurses, there are midwives, but the doctors, most of them are men, and they're the higher paid one. And even within a corporate setting, no, there's always the idea that okay, even if there are women in this company, the ones who make the actual decisions are men. No, so in the small scale mining, in small scale gold mining, it's the same. Women, the gender divisions usually is the ones that require quick care responsibilities, the ones that require basically they call it reproductive labor. Sorry, the reproductive rather than unproductive because it reproduces productive labor. So these are, for example, the reproductive labor meaning I do all the work so that my husband can go out into the world and make money. Or so that my daughter or my son can go out into school and learn how to make money. So that's reproductive labor. You reproduce everything.
Yeah.
And so it's the same in the small scale gold mining sector. Women do the reproductive work. So they clean, they cook for the miners, they do the secretarial work, ensuring that they're formalized, ensuring that the money is being distributed properly. But the ones who make the decisions, no, usually they're the men. Of course, and the ones who go to the actual tunnel to extract are the men. And because they're the ones who extract the ores, they're the ones who are paid higher. So there you see the same cycle. The work that matters, quote unquote matters, the one that is paid more. But the misconception is what work actually matters. All work matters. All work has to be valuable.
About it, no? Physical labor is more replaceable.
Yes.
As opposed to the skills that you require, for example, yung pag-ayos ng finances,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Secretarial work,
Yes.
etc., etc.
And it's ironic, for example, during the pandemic, the kind of labor that, for example, more women lost work, pero the kind of labor that was required to sustain the economy were labor that were predominantly led by women. Healthcare, education, and all of those things. So,
Actually, the mining sector was a good contributor during the pandemic.
yeah, exactly.
Do you believe na when we talk of the Philippine labor workforce, no, what important is we create an equitable environment and not an equal environment? Can you tell us the difference between the two?
So when you talk about an equal environment, kasi it's sort of like how to best explain this while being politically correct. For example, there's a very fit, strong man, no, and then there's a pregnant woman, and we know that there are health considerations to be made. For example, they are walking. And the woman is like 9 months pregnant, no, and she has other health conditions. So, because you know that some women, even if they're 9 months pregnant, they're very strong.
Yeah.
So this one has health conditions, and they have to walk from point A to point B. Now, when you talk about an equal environment, it's sort of like okay, it's the same traffic, rather, it's the same or sorry, they have to walk up a ramp, right? When you talk about an equal environment, both people will have equal distance. They will walk the same ramp, etc., etc. But when you talk about an equitable environment, there will be sort of safety nets for, let's say, this person who does not have the physical capabilities to walk up that ramp the same way that, let's say, a very fit person would. So that pregnant person might have like there might be, what do you call that? The side thing where you can hold your hand.
Okay, may parang real.
Something like that. Or for example, instead of stairs, no?
Oh, rail pala. I'm
Rail, sorry. No worries. No worries. But I couldn't even figure it out. But for example, in our world now, when you talk about equitability, rather than, let's say, stairs, there should be more ramps for people who are in wheelchairs. Instead of more stairs, there should be more elevators in big buildings. It's a consideration that not that. And when we talk about equitability, I like to mention the term phallogocentrism.
Okay.
Because
ano sabihin?
yeah, so when you say phallocentrism, basically, the very crude definition of that is yung center ng world is a penis.
Okay.
So, and because the center of the world is a penis, the entire world was, or for example, our society is built around the assumption that everyone can do everything a man can. And that is why, if you notice the structures of our, let's say, cities and our municipalities, it's very hard for people with different abilities, people with different abilities from men, no, strong, virile men, whatever, to go around. And that's why you see that, no, you see that in the way that there is, women have less access to mobility. No, logistically, it's harder for us to get around a city. And not to mention persons with disabilities or persons with different abilities, it's harder for them to access schools, no? And more boys have more access to schools, education, work, etc., etc. Creating a more equitable world actually means dismantling our entire system.
Yeah.
And saying that, okay, it's not working. It's not equitable for all people. We need more ramps. No, we don't need a 9-to-5 job. We need a job that is output based so that more people can have more access to actual formal paid work. And it's the same in the mining sector. For example, the tunnel themselves, no? As much as I hate to admit it, it's not very conducive for certain types of people. And right now, in the way that our bodies are designed, and because of how we were trained growing up, it's harder for women to enter the tunnels. And so a more equitable design would be, I don't know, instead of, kasi when they go down the tunnels, di ba, parang in some, parang isang bucket lang sila. So parang ganon. So it would be, for example, maybe create an elevator there. Who knows, parang ganon. Or maybe well, I've never been to a tunnel kasi inside the tunnel, I've just been outside it. So that's what equitable means versus equal. Kasi you could say, for example, that the world is more equal for women right now because we have the right to vote, we have the right to go to school. But when you talk about equitability, it's about access. Okay, we do have the right to vote, but how many of us have access to education that will allow us to make informed votes and all of those things? And it's the same. No, okay, you can say that women can work in the mines, but how many of us women have the access to be able to work in those mines? Kasi may discrimination pa rin eh. So that's what equitability means.
I guess on top of my head, no, when you said something about the tunnels and, being equitable, I think what can be a solution for now is, okay, probably the tunnels are not made made to be comfortable for a woman.
Yes.
But baka pwede nating bawiin sa yung wage system,
Yes,
right? So
yes.
parang, okay, they do manual labor. Okay, the women probably for now can't do the labor, but at least let's see if there should be a change in the wages naman, no? And
Yes.
not just for the mining industry, but across all
Yes,
entire workforce. A part of the work that you do is you also research about development finance, right? So can you walk us through that? And can you give us siguro just a summary of what you do in the context of course, helping women. Give help women siguro in terms of access and the likes.
So when you talk about development finance, it's a very broad term kasi, but when I used to do that research in my previous work, we used development finance as a way to literally find ways to finance development projects. So that's through taxes, no? Because, diba, parang the main revenue of governments is taxes. Ideally, our economy has to have higher tax to GDP ratio. So there's either through taxes or through development funding, etc., etc. It's such a broad term, but the way we do it is, of course, first of all, seeing how, for example, taxes affect women. No, and of course, we work very closely with women in community. So parang it's hard to say na parang okay, for example, versus labor, taxes is such medyo malayong convoluted idea. But the idea is that, for example, when we're talking about equitability, diba, our tax system kasi is very inequitable. For example, when you talk about consumption, in most households, women are the ones who consume goods because they are the ones who purchase goods for their families. Consumption taxes kasi is very, parang, how do I say this? It's non-discriminatory. It's discriminatory because, wait lang, i-gather ko ulit yung thoughts ko. Okay. So when you talk about, for example, our tax system, it's inequitable, no? Because we pay taxes in several forms, even people who aren't in the formal sector. But our tax system right now is structured in such a way where the ones who have more actually pay less.
That's true.
For example, as
I guess when you do like wholesale buying, diba?
Yes, exactly. But also, for example, corporate income taxes in a slash lately. And these corporations are the ones who have actually the most resources, the most personal income taxes. On the other hand, we do pay more personal income taxes. I don't know if you see your every month. Ang laki ng binabayad.
It's depressing.
It's very depressing. So, for example, a corporation versus someone who works daily, no? There were some parang computations about that, and they found that actually corporations were paying much less than someone who worked a 9 to 5. And what was worse was we found that billionaires or corporations pay much less in taxes than a street vendor in certain countries. That is because our tax structure is our tax systems are structured in such a way where we rely on consumption taxes. And consumption taxes, everyone pays consumption taxes. Kaya ang taas ng bilihin ngayon. And among those who are affected by it are women, because women are the ones who make ends meet every day. What we found out ngayon,
because usually they do the budgeting.
Yes, exactly. And what I found out was very surprising. For example, in the small scale gold mining industry, no, when a man works siya sa minahan buong araw, whatever he earns for that day, sometimes pang-iinom niya, sometimes pang the drugs niya, tapos yung the rest ibibigay niya sa asawa niya. But more often than not, as we know, it's not enough to make ends meet. And so apart from budgeting, it's usually wala nang paki yung kasi nag-work na siya 9 to 5 technically, tapos na yung work niya. Kung kulang yung budget, which is mostly everyday, what the mother does is siya maghahanap ng work.
So you need maging resourceful.
Yes, so that's why she finds work. For example, tatanong niya yung neighbor niya, kailangan ba na maglalaba, gano'n.
Napupunta sa kanya yung burden of making ends meet.
Yes, and what is more, she is the one who actually incurs debt. usually from informal lending, alam mo naman yung mga
yeah.
5, 6, ganon, under her name. And usually these ones, hindi, they don't know naman the family, they just know whoever, owes them money. And that is because, tuwing tataas ang bilihin, the more that she has to find work. And that's so parang very siya from tax systems to the pero like what the women in our communities always say, sabihin mo man na mahirap intindihin ang tax systems natin, pero yun yung rason kung bakit kulang ang pagkain nyo gabi-gabi. Ganon. So that's development finance, basically how the economy works in such a way that should prioritize development rather than profit. Because right now, we have to admit that our economy is developed in such a way that prioritizes profit.
Yeah.
That's why it's very centered on inspiring, bringing businesses in, without knowing if these businesses will trickle down to the communities, rather than, for example, focusing on actual development of local industry, local communities, education, and all of those things.
It's very systemic, no?
Yeah,
Like, it's really an issue that cannot be solved overnight.
Yes,
No?
yes.
And I guess kaya rin, this is, kumbaga hindi na siya related sa topic, but I just want to say na maybe that's why I think with the recent elections, no, nagkaroon ng rise with new breeds of politicians.
Yes,
no?
yes.
So anyway, ako I'd like to believe na while there are a lot of issues pa rin when it comes to women empowerment, and equitability, I think we've come a long way.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So, you think tayong mga babae, what can we do to actually contribute and make sure na the environment only becomes better and not worse?
First of all, we have to really assert our knowledge. No? So the question that you're asking, talagang pumapasok siya sa ecofeminism, which really asserts that the ones who know most about how to take care of the environment are women, because exactly of how we are placed in society. Because we know that a safe environment is a safe environment for our families. Unfortunately, I have to make that connection. Na parang women are, for example, when during disasters, no. Unfortunately, I don't know if nagkaka-studies that came out that say na whenever disasters come, yung highest mortality is women. Why? Because, for example, pag may flood, they usually stay at home to make sure that the house is okay, parang sort of sinking with their ship, no? But that is because we are more concerned about what is happening in our households and in our communities and in our environment more than most people. And so yes, that's the one. Assert our knowledge, no, especially within our households, no, kasi I don't know about you, pero for me, for example, at home, it's really my mom who cares about how clean the house is.
Yeah,
She's the one who cares about where all of the waste is going and all of those things. And that translates to our communities, and that translates to the entire country. Second, is to create the space for kasi for other women to there are so many women environmental defenders, no, and actually we are it's harder for us to assert ourselves because aside from being environmental defenders, we're also women, so we face a lot of discrimination. And I think one of the best ways to ensure that we play a leading role in that is to also play a role in creating safe spaces for women activists, for feminists, no, for especially for little girls.
Yeah.
No, kasi it starts there. And the moment a little girl speaks out, the first thing that their families do is to shush them. No, parang they always think na, oh, you're too opinionated for your own good. Ganon. I hope it's changing now. No? Kasi when I was a little girl, that was like how many years ago. So I hope it's changing now. And I hope that's why we're having a different perspective about, or the younger generations are having a different perspective. But yeah, that's creating a safe space where all young girls especially, and all people can share their opinion. Kasi usually kaya lang naman nagkakamali tayo is because no one listens to the woman. 'Di ba? Parang that's why we have all of these disasters happening. So,
Do you think kaya materials like this are very important?
Yes.
Kasi parang, as a child, parang there's a different representation of what a woman should look like.
yes.
So like, yeah, you can be a minor, but you can also be a mother, a driver,
Yes.
or whatever roles that you want to enter into.
Yes, agree. When I was younger, the first parang the main thing that I wanted to be was I wanted to be a teacher, and it was a very woman-centered kind of work. No, but then I realized, well, I can be anything, and you're right. That's the importance of these kinds of stories. Na we want to raise a generation where there are so many options for girls, where there were only two. Ganon.
And I want to go back to what you said about women sometimes just needs the opportunity to do it.
Yes, exactly. I think it's so strange, no? Based on my most recent research, actually there are more women graduating with higher grades in school, even college. But when it comes to the labor force participation, it hasn't changed in over 3 decades. So meron
And
talagang
what's the result of that
well,
study?
it showed that even if we were increasing access to education, the study showed that hindi pa rin nagbabago yung
Mas marami
yung
pa rin
labor.
lalaki.
Oo, mas maraming lalaki pa rin talaga sa
Workforce.
sa workforce. And I think our unpaid care work has a lot to do with that, no? Kasi
That's
parang
true.
the more meron ngang tinatawag na motherhood penalty. The moment that you have a child, bumababa yung sweldo mo, nagkaka-less opportunity ka, ganon.
It becomes harder for mothers to enter the workforce again, no? Kasi parang
Exactly.
they consider being a mother a liability.
Yes, exactly. Actually nga, aside from the motherhood penalty, meron pa silang tinatawag na fatherhood premium. Na parang when they find out that you are a father and a husband, parang mas nagiging valuable ka ba kasi because of, well, maraming theories as to why. I really stick to the fact na siguro they think he's more valuable because they know that there's someone else taking care of him, like making sure that, parang ganon, someone else in the background making his food, making sure that he's yung ganon. So,
Ako naman, parang the way I see it is, since father siya, may another layer, may bago siyang values na natutunan as a father.
yeah.
But the thing is, the same goes with mothers.
Yeah,
diba?
exactly.
And mas iba pa yun, like, the ability to rear children is, I mean, I've never been,
Same.
wala akong baby. But I can just imagine, diba? How hard it is to rear a child.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
So you're just my last question, before we go into this notebook for later. Do you have any advice to young women out there, those na eventually sana we hope that they get to read Mina Minera, no? But what is your message to I want to focus on the Filipino children, female children. What's your advice for them?
Parang ang dami. Parang, I guess I can
Siguro yung pinaka-important for you na you wish someone also told you when you were younger.
for me, I have my favorite quote was parang it went something like, parang every time a woman stood up for herself, parang without knowing it, without possibly meaning to, she stands up for all women. So I parang as a young girl I used to be very timid, even up until now. Actually, I have a hard time standing up for myself. But sometimes I guess it's because we're very, very collectivistic. I guess sometimes it would help to think na, for example, if you feel as though you're not in a space to be able to speak up your mind, remember that if you do, you're also doing it for your sisters.
That's true.
Yeah, and second, is that, you're not alone.
Community talaga, no? The importance of community.
Yeah, actually, the most important thing that I realized, that gave me strength was knowing that I wasn't alone. No, na parang kasi when I was younger, parang, the society has a way of dividing us women because we always feel like there's less space for us. We always feel like there are less
Yeah, and
opportunities.
it feels like we need to compete with each other.
Exactly. But I think the more that we realize that our strength really lies on our solidarity with each other. And with other communities, no, with the LGBTQ, with the with queer folk, 'di ba? Parang yung strength natin lies in that na parang we may have different experiences, but the moment that we come together, parang our lives will infinitely be better when we stop competing with each other.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's important that women learn how to say no.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yung really standing up for yourself. Kasi for example, the moment that you say no when you really mean it to someone, and what I realized in this world is that men have the audacity because to be honest, they do have the audacity because no one ever corrects them. Hindi sila sanay to be told no. And more often than not, and when hindi tayo sanay dito, when men make mistakes, people cover up for them.
Yeah.
But the moment that you, for example, say no to someone na hindi sanay doon, maybe very slowly masanay siya na, okay.
When you're vilified, parang defesa ka,
exactly.
diba, antipati ka, mas
Yeah, exactly. Not to condone naman yung mga negative attitudes, but it has parang sometimes kasi people think it's negative because it's a woman eh. But when a man displays those attitudes, diba, parang
it's strong.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
wow. So yeah, that's I think that's something that I want all girls to believe. Na parang first of all, your body will tell you what's important, or parang how you feel and what your safe space is. The moment that you start standing up for what your body tells you, then the world may be able to treat you accordingly.
I believe that na merong signals, like
Yes.
physical signals.
Yes,
Diba? Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, please take care. It's a hard world out there.
Alright, so actually, ang daming, parang hindi matatapos talaga yung discussion no, about women because it's very complicated. But this is all the time that we have. But thank you, Meggy.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and ito, actually, this is very historical. No? Kasi I don't think someone has ever had the guts to create a children's book like this. Kasi the mining industry has always been stigmatized.
Yes.
No, parang people feel as if nothing good can ever come out of mining.
Yeah.
But in small pockets in our communities, actually, it's a lifeblood for a lot of people.
Yes.
They just really need assistance. Diba?
Exactly. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Meggy. Oh, yeah. So before we end this episode, actually, meron kaming tradition dito sa Breaking Ground. So we ask our guests to write a question for the next guest. And then you should answer naman the question that was posted by our previous guest.
Okay.
Sige. So we have 2 questions here. Oh, one, ito pala has already been used, but okay. So you can choose from these questions. It's up to you if you want to answer it or not. Answer it on tape. On tape? Ang tanda, sorry.
Ito na lang siguro.
Okay.
Have you written a
Yeah.
poem for someone? Yes. Actually, a lot of someone.
Talaga?
Because I do love writing. But actually, I write songs.
Oh.
And the favorite song that and it's sort of like a poem, I guess. And the favorite song that I ever wrote for someone was in 2023. It was for Women's Month.
Wow.
And then it was for my best friend. Kasi my best friend, a few months before, parang she was heartbroken over someone. And then, kasi what she used to tell me before when I would be heartbroken was, if only you can see yourself in my eyes. And so I wanted to tell her that. Pero she
That's
said,
so nice.
that's so cliche na, Meggy. I tell you that all the time. So what I did was, okay, It's Almost Women's Month, I wrote her a song. Basically, I told her na parang, you're beautiful, you're mystical, you're inimical, ganon. Tas,
Wow.
that was the chorus of the
Sweet
song.
mo namang friend.
Yeah. So, befriend me, charot. So, yun.
True, okay.
So, yun, I have written a poem.
Ang swerte naman ni Ate Girl. Okay, now it's your turn to write a question naman for our next guest. So anything under the sun, pwede mong tanongin.
Okay, so
Thank you, Meggy. So, to those who are watching us, how can they reach you?
You can reach me via, well, for our work, no, in small scale gold mining, you can reach me via our email. So that's mkatigbak@artisanalgold.com.
Or we can just link it somewhere
Yeah.
sa video. Okay.
So you can contact me by email for our work, but for our work in small scale gold mining. But for my work as a gender specialist, as a feminist, I post a lot on Instagram. So you can check the channels there.
Okay.
So it's at MEGD Katigbak. Meggy Katigbak.
Alright.
So I post a lot about pole dancing as well, but also
Wow.
that's my work in as a feminist, parang bodily autonomy.
That's
You can
nice.
also catch me on Spotify.
Wow.
We have songs about women empowerment there as
Nandun
well.
din yung kinang-post mo.
Yes, for my
Okay.
best friend. It's called To My Darling Girl.
Wow.
But we also wrote a song for small scale gold miners. For women, it's called Isulong ang Pagkilos.
Okay, bye!
Bye!